make sense to put it online?
Now we can check later on after
Yeah.
the session ends.
And maybe first you will explain, Zalana, how to do
Yes.
this for the people who never did it.
Exactly. So the idea of this session was really open questions and a bit of feedback and so on that we can go through. And what we prepared, Ranka, Michael, and I, it's Mentimeter. I'm not so sure if you ever used it, but it's actually the questions that pop up immediately on my screen with your answers. I do not see who wrote it. But what I see, it's the answers that you provide. So if you scan the QR code, I leave this screen a bit longer, you should end up on the Mentimeter site presentation. It will look then a bit different than it looks on my screen, but you can always give the answer. So the slide that I share with you, this is the slide that you will see, but you have to provide the answers. So I leave this QR code a bit longer.
Yeah, you scan it with your telephone and you have it open all the time. So then you make your answers on the phone, but watch the presentation on your screen.
And I think I left the QR code also on the next topic, so just give us the thumbs up if you have it. Did you get any answer from Georg, Michael? You're muted.
He did not read what I wrote, so I think he might not be on, not even on the phone.
Okay. Then nothing. Okay, then I go to the next slide and then we can check. So there were a few questions. I only got the questions from Georg in advance. And he had actually quite some 4 interesting questions that we can maybe still discuss them and then figure it out what to do. So actually, I really like this one. If you want to then ask additional questions when you have the Mentimeter, you can just write the questions below. You have submit your own question on your phone. But I like this one a lot. When Georg was asking about biostimulants that you could use in aquaponics, so how to use them. And my first thing that I would answer is, before you start playing around, split the systems up, meaning you do not test it on the fish if you're not so sure what kind of effect it has. Or you two would say something else.
I would say the same. I would never play around with anything where fish are included. If there is something like that, I might even do first a separate toxicity testing with some zebrafish. There are tests for zebrafish where we work with that, Zala knows it, with fish eggs, which are not required an approval of ethic commissions, because until 96 hours, I think, after birth, so to say, of the egg, of fish egg, you do not need approval of ethics commission. And first I would do toxicity testing of zebrafish to see to see what happens, because there are many effects that could be on the fish. Also in later stages, not only acute effects, but also chronic effects, you could bring in diseases and everything. So you have to be really careful about the fish. But that, I think a toxicity testing would be the absolute minimum that I would do with any such things which you concoct yourself.
And not only on the small fish, but also
Yeah.
then later on, as soon as you have the results for the eggs, you can go on fingerlings, and afterwards you do at least a bit of research on a grown-up fish, because what has the effect on the fingerlings might be
Yes.
different than on the grown-ups.
Yeah.
So
So
and normally
actually,
the grown-ups are more sensitive.
yeah. So actually, Heba, we will ask this question. Okay, so maybe we go to the next question.
So the next question that I got, is it viable to use different aquacultures to optimize the nutrient flow for hydroponic production? Maybe not just different fishes, but also shellfish and so on. I would say, I don't know if you talk only about the water quality, right? From different kinds of aquaculture, this is definitely a good way of going because you have different fish feed. So you also end up with different nutrients. But they are quite often also the systems where you use the crayfish and fish at the same system, probably not in the same tank, but you have maybe 2 tanks. But it's then as soon as you have these multi-trophic systems, it's quite complicated with the water flows and so on, which makes it quite hard to operate. But it works well. I mean, we also have in our show system, we have at the moment, we have carps, and at the same time in the second tank, we have the crayfish. So any leftover fish feed that is left from the kois get eaten by crayfish to keep all of them happy. So you actually try to recycle even more. But when you talk about the mussels, it's not only the mussel problem. They, of course, clean the water. However, also there, the problem is more the reproduction cycle because everything ends up in your pipes.
I would say mussels are a no-no for any system which in the pipes where you have some, because you can't control that. There have been in the past several ideas how one could use the filtering capacity of the mussels, like in the lakes, and so you can't do that. You can only do such type of multi-trophic system in the sea, or maybe in the lake, but outside, not with anything involved with pipes.
Michael, anything else to add?
No, I agree. I mean, multi-trophic systems are quite interesting, I think, especially when you go not too intensive. But I would also agree with Ranka that it's more for more biological environment than fish tanks and artificial recirculating aquaculture systems.
It's the same. I mean, also, I would say sometimes you end up with the snails in the system and you just hope that this does not happen because I mean, then they are everywhere and you do not get rid of them. They clog all the pipes and destroy all the pumps. So there is nothing good to have them in the system except to maybe a bit more fish feed for the fish that would eat the snails, but it causes more problems than anything good.
Yes, and from a production point of view, I mean, oftentimes you get more diverse, but also less intensive. So from the economical point of view, it's oftentimes not a very good idea to have too many cultures in your system.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, the different temperatures, different water quality parameters, and so on. It gets complicated.
Different harvest techniques, different post-harvest work, so life gets very complicated.
For the new ones that joined, just a quick sum up of what we are doing. Please scan the QR code and you will end up on Mentimeter website. And at the moment you can ask open questions and we will try to answer them. Just scan it with your phone and then you can just type down the questions. So, are algae necessarily bad for an aquaponic system? And when including shading, do we aim to reduce algae to protect the aquaculture hydroponic setup or the pipes or all the above? Michael, do you answer this one?
I mean, algae are not bad on their own. They can also help to sustain a system by providing oxygen, for example. So I would, and also by providing food or feed to your fish. So it's a little bit the same as for the multi-trophic systems. I would say it's probably more adapted to ponds or biological environments than for recirculating aquaculture, because with the growth of algae, you have the same problems with than with other solids, that they can clog your system, the pipes. They can also grow inside of the pipes. They can be a problem for the sedimentation and all this stuff. So for recirculating aquaculture systems, I would prefer to not have them. And regarding the shading, it's from my point of view that you really try to protect the whole system from algae. So not only the aquaculture, but also the hydroponic setup and the pipes and everything. And I mean, especially in the hydroponics part, you don't want to have algae to compete with your other plants for nutrients, right? That's why you even try to prevent algae from growing on the surface of your grow beds, like media beds.
The main problem is also in this competition is that algae have so-called luxury consumption of phosphates. And because phosphorus tends to be limiting anyway in the aquaponic, because the fish food does not contain a lot of phosphorus, then you really make the problem more difficult, because it's not that they take away the nitrogen, which there is too much of it, but maybe you could even harvest the algae and get rid of the nitrogen. They preferentially take away the phosphorus, and then you really have a problem for your plants. And the other problem with algae is, if you have algae in the system and the fish, if you have a fish species that eats the algae, there are fish species, partly even tilapia can eat the algae, but carps, for instance, eat the algae. They eat the big algae. They eat the bigger, like you would get rid of the bigger algae species, like some, how is it called? Oh dear, Fadenalgen. Well, anyway, the whole selection pressure moves towards smaller algae to survive, and that's cyanobacteria, and they can be toxic. So you could have, in the end, if you have carps, you can end up with the broth of algae of very, very small size, and some of them can even be toxic. So it's not a good business. I think it's really better to shade, and fish also personally prefer shade. They don't like direct light on their tanks.
No, and they can get sunburns. I mean,
Yes.
they are not made to be directly on the sun, so
Yeah,
they prefer to hide.
yeah.
Okay. What would be the most viable, profitable way to start an aquaponic system, with the aquaculture or the hydroponic setup? Who wants to answer that one? Michael?
I think this is not very easy to answer, to be honest, because
The egg and the chicken question.
there are so many different ways to look at it. I would always say, from my experience, the profitability of an aquaponic system comes from the hydroponics usually, at least for most systems that I ever saw. So if you want to have something profitable at the beginning, I would say start with hydroponics, because it's also so easy to supply the plants with other fertilizers that do not come from the fishes. On the other hand, I think that the aquaculture part of an aquaponic system is a more difficult one to operate. So if you start with aquaculture and you can handle the aquaculture, you will be sure that at the end you will be able to handle the whole system, probably more reliable than when you start with hydroponics and then at the aquaculture. So if you want to start with one of both, I'm not really sure what might be the right way to do. But in the end,
I would actually go with the third option, with microorganisms. So I would go with option C. I start with microorganisms, because if I do not have a well-developed biofilter, I will kill probably both.
Sure, yeah. But then you already have an aquaculture system installed.
I mean, you have it installed, but you can just run the biofilter as a start, or at least the gravel or something to start that part. And then
I was taking the question like, if I don't want to build the whole aquaponic system at the beginning, but do only half of the invest, with which part should I start? That was what I was thinking.
But then the answer would be actually the hydroponic in media bed.
Yeah.
Because then you have both. Not hydroponic in NFT.
Yeah. But it really depends where are you situated.
Yeah.
It's also on the local business plan that it matters.
Yes, but the advantage of starting with hydroponics is also that usually the investment in hydroponics is less heavy than in the aquaculture system.
Definitely. Some new questions popped up. What are the chances of microplastic bioaccumulation in fishes in aquaponic systems? Considering the fishes are reared in plastic tanks and the hydroponic site requires the use of plastic.
I don't know. It depends how much. We don't know.
At the moment, there is not yet a clear answer.
Yeah.
Also, the scientific community does not yet have a clear answer, because there is also the fish that are captured from the oceans. They have a lot of microplastic inside because they live in contaminated water. So when you have to compare it at the moment, at least if I remember correctly, when I checked last time, there was not yet a clear answer what's worse. And it also depends a lot what kind of plastic are you using for your systems, because maybe you do not get microplastics in, or not so much, right?
Yeah, I could imagine that, let's say that you work with a plastic tank like IBC tank, and if it's not standing in the sun, the deterioration and the sort of release of microplastic is probably, I could imagine, lower than some plastic bottles floating in the ocean, where you have lots of sun and lots of, rubbing with the waves and so. So it could be that you even have a lower contamination if you raise fish in recirculating aquaculture. Now, the hydroponic side, it does not really require always the use of plastic. You could have also media bed with clay, with expanded clay, and there is it not NFT. Or you could build maybe some other material, wood.
But most of the time, the microplastic comes from the degradation of plastics.
Yes.
And even in our aquaculture system, even if the IBC tank at one point in time begins to degrade, so it will break, and then you will exchange it. You will just not leave it in the system, so you won't have much microplastic from IBC tanks or pipes, I think. The main source of microplastics might probably be
Biochips.
the biochips in the biofilter, exactly. And from that, I don't know exactly how much abrasion you have on the plastic and in what period of time. Probably you will have to exchange them from time to time to prevent too much bioplastics from entering.
There is an interesting master thesis in there.
Yeah. And if you don't want to have plastic in your biofilter, you can choose other media like coconut chips or whatever. That's not really bad neither. So you can avoid plastics in this regard.
I read somewhere that the aquaponics can be used for green walls too. Is it affordable, or if the ROI is meaningful or even a logical choice? I would say, I mean, it's the same. You are not wasting, but you are consuming a lot of energy for pumping the water up. So you have to be really careful with your setup of the system, but it works. They were companies that are using these vertical setups where you have vertical channels. But mainly they are for home systems where you do not have space. What's normally the problem is if you have towers, then it's the problem of the sun orientation, because if you have a tower, then half of the plants have light, half not. And on the green wall, if you have it on the sunny side, it can be good, but if you have any leakages and this is the wall of your house, I'm sure that you're not too happy if by chance there is a small leakage and it starts to drip on your wall. But I think that long time ago, Ranka, I think that some students tested some vertical systems,
Yes.
right?
Yes. I mean, you can go vertical. I mean, there are vertical systems, also commercial vertical systems in hydroponic, which you could connect to the recirculating aquaculture. You could do that. There is nothing speaks against that. You would again have the pump. You would have to supplement the nutrients. Return on investment makes sense only depending on the circumstances where you are. And again, this is a question, is this green wall a low-tech green wall, like a housewife puts the plastic bottles, like Garrafa system of Uni Bologna on the wall of her house, or is it a high-tech commercial system, green walls in, I don't know, in some greenhouse, or is it a decorative green wall? For decoration, I would never do it with aquaponics because it would be too dangerous for fish. But if you have it for your private use with little fish in, not too many fish, and on your wall of your house, because you don't have more space, why not? You could do it.
Michael, do you have anything to add?
No?
So that was the last one that we had. Heba also asked about the homework, but I cannot share so many screens at once, so I do not actually, we can check that maybe afterwards, after Mentimeter. We have more questions for you, but hopefully we end up with a nice clouds for the words. The first word that pops up in your mind when you are talking about our webinar series. Let's see if it works. And probably we will not have more questions, more answers than that. But what I will do is I will send this Mentimeter to everyone that whatever registered for our webinar. And then once I get a bit more answers, I will share it with everyone so everyone can see what the cloud will look like after some more people answer. Also the ones that are not joining us today.
So you can type in 3 words for this slide, no?
Okay. But I would, yeah, just take time, or I will also share the link with you and you can also do it afterwards, after the webinar. And I share this nice cloud with all of you afterwards. So now we need some feedback from you. It was a long webinar series. You were with us since April, if I'm not mistaken. We had in total 14 webinars, so that we know how to make it better next time. We just wanted to hear some general feedback from you. And you can just slide it the way how you think on each of the questions. I think you have a slide button for this one. If you did not yet join, you can join with code up and just go on the website from Mentimeter.
Lala, I don't understand. Do you want from us to answer about this information? Do you need this information now?
Yes,
Yes.
you go on your phone and you slide the answer to the number that you want. If you want 4.5, you want 3 or 1 or 2, and you answer all these on your phone. Because your phone is connected to Mentimeter.
Join, yeah. Now I am just join. I'm into. Yeah.
I think that I will send it to everyone because there is not many people with us today, so I will let then everyone else also to answer. But if you help us a bit, it would be great to have a general feedback. Then we have a next slide. So this one with pictures. So which soil system would you recommend to a modest urban family seeking to improve their nutrition?
So there are five possibilities. Chop and flip aquaponic, the Garrafa system, which Uni Bologna wrote, vertical farming, very high-tech system, a simple media bed system in buckets or whatever you have, or a semi-vertical system with self-made NFT channels, let's call them NFT from bambus or something, some other locally available material.
Ranka, I know that you will not like it, but there are two options for the chop and flip.
I see. But we can still improve the chop and flip. You know, we can chop twice and flip once, or no, chop
Twice.
twice and have 3 flips. Then then it's not bad, but this is not enough, no? There is not enough biofilter for the tank on this picture.
You always have to be careful. I mean, it would work if you have 2 fishes inside the
That's
tank.
true. That's true. But then you don't get enough protein to eat.
Yes. You can have it at home in the garden if you want to play, but if you want to really stock up this IBC tank at the bottom, then the grow bed has to be a bit bigger. So the same as we said, you chop 3 times, so you get maybe 3 media beds for 1 IBC tank. So since the webinar series was quite long, we also wanted to have a feedback on which of the topics were the most useful for you and which are the ones that you took the most knowledge with you afterwards. This is on the part 1 where we were, so the first one was when Ranka was introducing the general idea of the soilless cultivation. Then it was Linda with the fish biology, health and welfare. So everything that the fish would need. Then we had Michaela with the fish feeding and the growth. Me with Carlos with water quality in the fish production. Michael again with the construction of simple RAS and operation of RAS. And University of Bologna for the simplified hydroponics. I quite like these new Mentimeter functions, actually. They are quite cool with the circles and moving around and colors. I think we will not get more answers. And then for the part 2, we had the plant requirements and the nutrient deficiencies, plant monitoring, balancing of the aquaponic system pond culture, and improving the nutrient use efficiency, and then of course the business plan with the energy. Cool. I'm really happy to see the answers actually. And I think especially this one about the balancing of aquaponic system, I think that it's one of the most important one, how to set up the system to know how many plants you need for which amount of fish feed. And here really it comes to, if you calculate then, for example, for chop and flip, here you really get your numbers out, what's allowed and what's not allowed if you want to have a good system. How much has your understanding of aquaculture, hydroponics, and aquaponics improved through this series? Not bad. I'm happy to hear that. Then we had how balanced was the coverage between the aquaculture, hydroponics, and aquaponic topics? Would you prefer to have, for the next time we do it, would you prefer to have more aquaculture, more hydroponics, more aquaponics, both? More pond culture? I mean, we did not put it on the list, but as pond, I would say also aquaculture. Thank you. Then how can we improve the webinars? But here we would need your written answers. So maybe here you want to think a bit more. I don't know if you want to answer now or then also think about the answers and provide them afterwards when we have the, I send you the emails around.
As a not very technical person, I have a question. You send us the scan, the key code, and we can sort of go always back to this presentation and go through the questions and write our answers.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe you will have to do some, like a deadline, like a week?
Yes, I cannot leave it longer than 14 days anyway. So I would
Okay.
leave it the same as
Okay.
it is till now. It's always 14 days.
Okay,
And
then
I will
it's
share
okay.
it with everyone and people can do it on their own as well. Maybe we can test it, that it really works before I send it around. But the code should
And
be valid
We
for...
would have to do screenshots, or can you export in PDF of the results just for documentation?
I think that I can export it, but I can also take the screenshot just in case. Just to be sure. More practical work. How would you do that actually? On the webinars? With more examples, with...
As you do in Jordan, but we need more. We need more practical work. Individual practical work.
individual
collaboration.
practical work. The same, yeah. Online it's much harder, but with Mentimeter like this, you know, we could next time do the nutrient deficiencies on the same way. Now that we know how it works. Or with the chocolate fish feet, right? This one I know that you liked. Okay, so why is aquaponics a difficult system for beginners? What would you say? It requires space, it requires electricity, it requires fingerlings, it requires fish and plant knowledge. Yeah, I would also go with this one, definitely. It's a lot of knowledge that it's needed at the start. If you start growing plants, I mean, it's one thing, but if you have two different kinds of systems, you need the same amount of knowledge for both. You cannot start with, as an aquaculture specialist, growing plants in aquaponics and they will be perfect at the beginning. It just doesn't work. So which insights from the webinars do you plan to implement in your work or your studies? Which practical ideas or concepts you found most useful? And I think also for this one, we can leave it a bit longer than people can think a bit what they would like to answer. Otherwise, I share it with you afterwards. So with this, we would like to thank you very much, but maybe we can still check the homework from last time. Michael, do you remember what exactly it was? I'm sure that you know it better than I do.
It was a market research for supply chains and selling prices for produce.
Can you show once again the homework?
I can let
Or is
me.
it difficult to find it?
I mean, probably we can have a look at Heba's homework. I don't know if you have it, Sala.
Yep, just give me a second.
If it's okay with Heba.
She asked for it, so.
Yes,
Oh,
I
yeah.
asked for it.
Okay.
I'm always afraid to open my mail.
Why? Because there are hundreds of unanswered
Yeah.
mails.
Exactly. And I checked in the evening and tried to empty a bit, but as soon as I open it in the morning, it's full again.
Whoosh.
So I make it a bit bigger probably. Michael, do you go over it?
I can do it, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't see it.
Oh, sorry. The screen too. Share. Now.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, but that was, it's not the homework about the market research.
That's the balancing. Probably this one is the one that was the hardest, I would say.
The cost benefits analysis, the
Yeah.
last one.
But then, yeah, you wanted to talk about that, right, Heba?
No, I want to talk about the cost balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we will not go through this one here, Sala.
When did you? This is the one that I got. Wait, now I have to search. Here. Sorry.
Yes, sir. An Excel sheet.
Yeah. Sorry.
But from what I see here on this, that looks good to me. The
Sorry?
balancing.
This one.
It's take longer time. It's take long time for solving.
That's good to know. I know
Yes,
your
this.
Excel works other way around. Now I have Excel also working opposite than before.
That's
Yeah.
key. Okay. So you reproduced a little bit the Excel file style that we used also together in Jordan or in the webinar.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
But when you see the last, the benefits cost differences in cash flow for the aquaculture, sorry, it's
Yeah.
in negative.
Yes. Yeah, but that can happen.
So when I add the labor, you asked for the labor, so I add 2 labor and 600 for both in the cycle. So I get 102,000 Jordan dinars. So the number is go to the negative. I don't know it is
Yes.
it is good or bad. The metric, the payback periods, it's in 1 year, because the hydroponic give me a large or a high number of for the cash flow. It's one for cash
Yes.
flow 10,000.
Yes. Yeah, but that's what I see oftentimes, especially for small scale aquaponics, that you don't really make a lot of benefit out of the aquaculture produce. And oftentimes even you have a little loss, and somehow you should try to at least don't make a loss with your aquaculture, but the benefit oftentimes comes from the hydroponics. That's
Yes.
and
It is normal.
conclusion
Is
can
this
be
normal?
can go into two directions. Either you decide, okay, if the hydroponics part is so much more beneficial than the aquaculture part, then I will only do hydroponics and just buy my fertilizer and go with that. Or you say that you can draw some additional benefit of the sustainability of your system by, for example, achieving higher selling prices also for your vegetable produce by saying the way it was produced was more sustainable than traditional horticulture would be, right? So this might be something that makes economically sense in the end, and just to go with the fish, even though they don't really add so much to the economic success of the whole.
Mhm.
But you
So
did
according
nothing
to
wrong, I would say, because if you have the accurate numbers, you could always try to figure out where you put the most or you lose the most money. But if you're looking at your sheet here with the calculations, I think it's mainly the labor that is expensive and you can't do nothing about it. But I think on the other hand, what does two units of labor signify exactly?
I think it's the minimum. It's if you have two labor.
But what does it mean, two labor? Is it two persons full
Two
time
person, yes, two person.
that work the whole day on the system?
Yes,
Yeah, but then I think you overestimated the workload of such a small system because you only have 7 cubic
7
meters
cubic meter.
of fish, and I think you on a system like this you would work
One?
probably only with one person half a day.
I mean, maybe it's better to say, yes, you need one person, but not one person as a person, but actually you need once in a while 2 people 50%. But you still calculate the same way, right? So I would lower the labor. And one thing that I would also lower, if you have a good fish feed and also a good operational system, FCR of 1.4, it's quite high for tilapia. So for tilapia in good system with a good fish quality, which I know that you can get, I would also put at least on 1.2.
So reduce the amount of feed.
Exactly. So at least now you ended up a bit in positive number.
Yes. And I think that's the most important, that you achieve a small scale aquaponics, that you don't make a loss with the aquaculture, and then you're good, I think.
But in the hydroponic, we need two labor. I bought also two labor
Yes.
for hydroponic.
Yes, because you have 700 square meters. That's quite a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's larger. Yes.
That's okay with labor.
Yeah, but you can afford it on this side, so no problem with that.
But this is a really interesting exercise because then you can see what you have to achieve and how do you have to plan for it. Actually, everybody before doing an aquaponics should start with something like that.
Yes.
Before designing, you have to start this.
Exactly. To figure out what are the pain points.
Yes, and the problem that we always face with our feasibility studies for commercial growers is that if you really want to go into a size of aquaculture that would a specialist choose to have a beneficial aquaculture, you get really huge hydroponics as a counterpart because I mean, if you go, for example, with trout production in Germany, you would want to have about 100 tons per year of production, but then you need about 2 or 3 hectares of growing greenhouse area as a counterpart, and that's quite ambitious.
Yes, actually, the thinking then would be you need to find a grower who already has 10 hectares under glass and tell to this person it would be great if you would take from me the fertilizers. I will have a recirculating aquaculture adjacent to your greenhouse, and instead of buying fertilizer, you take my water and my, end of pipe. But then there is a lot of other thinking that has to be done at the same time. But
I hope this helps.
But it's well done. Good work.
yeah, super cool.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Otherwise, Georg joined.
Yeah. Please excuse my later. I had a vital meeting this morning. I sent you some questions.
Yeah, we answered those.
Okay, missed. I have to check the recording then.
Yes, we answered all the questions. Hopefully you will like the answers. Otherwise, come back and then we make a plan.
Yes, sounds
So,
great. Sounds great.
Georg, actually, the Zala will send instructions. You should log into Mentimeter with the help of QR code she will send and provide the answers to our questions now. Not now, but maybe in the next
Afterwards,
days.
yeah.
Okay.
So that we have kind of answers from the whole community.
Okay, I will do that. Thanks.
So I think with this, if you do not have any further open questions, Georg, for you, we answered all 4 questions that you sent. Hopefully on a long way that you know what we wanted to say, and that we provided satisfactory answers to you. Otherwise, with that, I would like to thank everyone for joining us for this year. It was a lot of work, but we learned a lot. I think also we learned a lot.
Yes.
And hopefully to meet some of you anytime in the future or for some further projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all from my side.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
very much for all of you. You are very
Thanks to
hard
my-
work.
Thanks to my lovely colleagues too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Then you hear from me. I send you the email with further instructions. And as soon as everybody fills up Mentimeter, hopefully more people, I come back with you, hopefully with a nice word cloud.
Thanks.
Thank you very much and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.